Cash Johnny Caine's An American View, 1958. Episode 8. Portland, Oregon to Eureka, California. I left Portland with Eleanor's breath still in my ear. We parted ways with electricity between our lips and a promise to write, which I actually meant more than I thought I would. The Willamette River kept me company as I guided Peachy Cream south out of the city. Soft clouds hovered like marshmallow pillows above Portland's rooftops, and the air was wet with a hint of Pacific salt. Tualatin drifted past with a billboard that leaned into the wind, promoting a new fan-dangled color television set. The soft smell of damp bark and pine tugged at my collar like a homesick specter. Wilsonville came with the bridge, a span of steel grace crossing back over the Willamette again. She and I, entwined like temperamental lovers, constantly parting ways and reconciling, and we would again, a little later, in Salem. Past the Woodburn turnoff, I allowed the volume on the radio to violate acceptable decibel levels when I heard Sam Cooke's deity-level talent coming through with "Good Times." It made me tap the wheel and the floor of the Buick in time, like an old Ludwig kid. Salem wore its state capital Sunday best. Neat homes tucked beneath canopies of elm and maple, and the Willamette rolling up on me again, softly sulking, carrying the scent of wet timber and orchard wind. I found a cafe with fogged-up windows and a waitress who poured me a coffee and considered it a personal affront if I didn't try their loganberry pie. Out of town, the Cascade Range reintroduced itself to me on my left, patient and permanent, its blue shoulders rising like an old man stretching in the cold. Albany was a brief thought, rail yards and rust, silent signals, and a hitchhiker who looked too much like a talker to me, and I didn't feel much like talking. I just wanted to look and think, so I drove on by. I decided to lunch it up in Eugene, a cheddar cheeseburger with crinkle-cut fries at a chrome-plated soda fountain. The menu said local, fresh, and the taste backed up their claim. Cottage Grove was a sleepy nook, just gas pumps and woolen clouds, and drain followed suit like its namesake, the highway narrowing and trees leaning in for the gossip. Elkton arrived with a pine perfume and signs for jams and jerky, and Scottsburg was hardly more than a pause between the trees, a wooden sign, a bridge, and a curve in the river that once dreamed of becoming Portland. At Coos Bay, I pulled off at a lookout to try and steal a glimpse of the Pacific. It was there that I was approached by the most beguiling police officer I had ever seen. She introduced herself as Officer Alice. She wore a crisp OSP uniform, and her face was as striking as a thunderclap. She asked me if I had seen any speeders come by. I said no, and quipped that if the speeders only knew that she was on patrol, it would behoove them to slow up on the pedal a little. She didn't laugh at my clunky attempt to flirt, but I think she wanted to. Officer Alice sped off, leaving me with a hint of her perfume clinging to my shirt, and I made my way to Port Orford, where the coast was caught in a tug-of-war between progress and coastal living, and progress was losing big. Gold Beach was certainly pretty enough, and Brookings sat like a pearl in a shell, cradled by redwood shadows and the endless breath of the Pacific. In Crescent City, I decided to relive my childhood and ordered a lime milkshake from a soda fountain and inhaled it with verve. I returned home to my native state of California via Eureka and Trinidad, but the similarities to my home in Palm Springs began and ended with the bear on the flag. Here, little hamlets were guarded by lazy redwood enclaves, and a man's wealth was measured in flapjack conquests and the size of his lumber truck. I decided to let Peachy Cream punch the clock when I pulled into Eureka. It was a dreamy old town with painted ladies lining the streets and Victorian architecture featuring heavily. The crown jewel of the town was the Carson Mansion, a ridiculously ornate superstructure overlooking Woodley Island. One local guffawed when he told me it was the castle that timber built, and I suppose it was. I checked into a modest little motel called the Spraybow Lodge, a hidden beauty in lilac and gold accents with brass keys and creaky stairs. I took a stroll downtown before grabbing dinner and spotted a marquee glowing softly above the street corner, the long hot summer, one night only. I figured it was time to tend to my cultural malnutrition, which had begun to itch like a bad memory. So, I went in, bought a bag of popcorn that tasted like every cinema I'd ever wandered into alone, and let myself get pulled into the sweat and southern drawl of Paul Newman's Ben Quick, a drifter with a past all swagger and ache, burning barns and bridges just to stay warm. Halfway through, I realized I wasn't watching him. I was recognizing him. Same hunger in the eyes, same slow grin hiding something broken, same need to be seen by the right woman just once before the road called again. I stepped out into the evening hush, popcorn salt still on my fingers, that slow southern heat of the film still curling in my chest. The streets were near empty, just the hum of a neon diner sign and the feeling that I was being watched. And I was, by the law. To my incredulity, Alice, the police officer from back in Coos Bay, was leaning against her patrol car in front of me, like she'd been waiting there for a while. She had swapped out her Oregon State uniform for a figure-hugging orange party dress. She was smiling, but she didn't say hello. She just looked at me a little sideways and said, "I've never seen a man smile that much during a movie before. It was cute." I thought about lying or coming up with something cool to say, but instead I found my tongue opting for sincerity. I explained that in the past I had spent so much of my time chasing things that didn't make me happy, that I forgot what it felt like pursuing the things that did. Then I added, "What are you doing down here anyway? Aren't you well out of your jurisdiction?" She lied and joked that my earlier attempt at flirting deserved a do-over. And after revealing that I had a vulnerable side, a man like me deserved another swing. The truth was, she had just completed a routine perp walk down to San Francisco and had noticed Peachy Cream my very distinctive baby pink '57 Buick Caballero resting in the theater parking lot on her way back up north. But I liked her fictitious version better. I asked her when she was due back on deck at the OSP, and she answered my question with a question. She asked, "When are you planning on hitting the road again?" In a heartbeat, I blurted out, "Tomorrow morning," and I meant it. She gave me a cheeky grin and said, "We'd best find some fast food to go then."